Okay, welcome back. Uh, Today we are going to do fundamental theorem of algebra as a last example of the application of Weierstrass theorem, and probably the most non-trivial one as well. Okay, so what does the fundamental theorem of algebra says? It says that if you have a nth degree polynomial, let me take a um, monic polynomial. Uh, so a2 x to the power n minus 2, and or let me use the coefficients as a n minus 1 x n minus 1 a n minus 2 x n minus 2 up to so on a1 x1 up to a0. So this is a monic nth degree polynomial with real coefficients. Then it has n roots, could be real or complex. I am permitting x to be real or complex. I mean, that means x is essentially complex. So what I am trying to say is you can factorize p of x as x minus x1 into x minus x2 and so on product up to x minus xn, where x1 x2 to xn are the roots of the polynomial, which means that p of xi is equal to 0. So this kind of factorization is what we are trying to give here. Now, if I have this kind of a factorization, it is actually what it means is that I have to, it is enough to show that it has one root. Okay, not the no root. I meant to say it has one root. Could be complex number, could be real number, but it has one root. For example, if you look at x square plus 1 as p of x, it has two roots which are imaginary, in this case plus minus I. If you look at a polynomial like x minus 1 whole square, then it has two roots, each of one repeating oneself, and you know a lot about it. I am just trying to, in fact, a lot of times we know a lot of things, but we don't know how they come from. So here our optimization insight and Weierstrass theorems insight, using that we are trying to know, actually get a proof of this fundamental theorem of algebra. That's what we are trying to do. So suppose you show that it has one root. Okay, so then what does it means? You can write p of x as x minus x1 into the remaining quotient q of x, where this will become now a n minus degree monic polynomial. So therefore, then what it means, again by application of this same theorem, that if you have proved that it has one root, then you can write this as x minus x2 into the next polynomial, and so on, uh, So basically you will be able to expand this as x minus x1 into x minus x2 and so on. Finally the nth root you will reach, and then there will be nothing further no further root to be found out after n steps, and you would have solved your problem. So essentially, to prove this theorem, fundamental theorem of algebra, that it has n roots, all I need to show is there is one x star such that p of x star is equal to 0. This is all I have to show that. And even though I have taken real coefficients, this could be complex, as my previous example, previous discussion just showed that to you. So, what is the minimization problem that one can think about it if I want to show that P of x star is 0? What should be the minimization problem that I should pose on? Will this work? Minimize just P of x? No, it cannot work, is it not? Because if what if it becomes negative? What it be if it becomes complex? What if it becomes negative? What it becomes complex? So this will not work. Let us therefore refine this to minimize modulus of or absolute value of P of x. This is defined, absolute value is a real number. In fact, coming from r plus means 0 and all positive real numbers. This is what r plus means. R double plus usually means all positives, no zero. Okay, so if I say minimize modulus of the or the absolute value of P of x, then you know that actually the minimum is going to be uh, a non-negative number for sure. And if I am able to show, if I am able to show that this minimum is 0, then uh, then we can, if I am able to show that this minimum is 0, then I have found the root, is it not? So actually I need to just show that, I just need to show that this minimum is actually 0. To show that this minimum is 0, there are two things that I have to show. I think you all have become expert on this now. First, there exists a root. This is the first thing that I need to show. And then second, that minimum value that it should takes the root, and we are talking of global minimum here, is actually 0. So these are the two things that I need to show, is it not? So to show that this has a root, okay, this problem, minimum of P of x, in other words, modulus of P of x is solvable, okay. And look, in this case I am having a modulus function, it is not a differential function, but fortunately Weierstrass theorem can be used with non-differentiable functions also. Only thing is I will not be in a position to use the necessary and the sufficiency conditions. That's the only thing, first order differentiability conditions, that I will not be able to use, but I will prove this theorem without using them, okay. So uh, so now let us say that minimize, we want to first show that there is solvable. That means there is some x star which solves this problem. This is what we want to show. So I am going to basically show, how do I show that? The This is where Weierstrass theorem comes in, is it not? And the way I am going to show this is that this function modulus of P of x is a coercive function. This is what I am going to do now. So let's write what this is. You can call this function as f of x, and this is modulus of x to the power n, a to the power n minus 1 plus x to the power n minus 2, and so on up to a1x plus modulus of a of naught. Okay, so this what we want to show here, that n tend x tend modulus of limit of x, modulus of x tending to infinity, absolute value of x tending to infinity, this modulus of P of x should go to infinity. So it doesn't matter whether x goes to minus infinity or whether x goes to plus infinity. Both the cases are fine, and it's just a univariate function, so nothing to really expand this further on. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll first write p of x as, I'll take x to the power n common outside and write this as 1 by x plus, and x equal to 0 I am not going to take, please, that's understood, because I am going to take x to infinity. Easily I can rule out x going to 0 plus a0 by x to the power n, a0 by x to the power n. And so if I look at this, uh, modulus of this into modulus of what is here. So let me be lazy. With your permission, let me be a bit lazy here, and yeah. So I'm going to uh, uh, I'm going to write this as, oh no, apologies for the mistake. So I'm going to write modulus of p of x as this, and now this is same as this. Do you agree with this or not? Minus of 1 to the it's okay. I think I don't need to expand this further. So I'm going to take this as follows. Now you look at this, the terms like an by 1 by x in the limit mod of x going to infinity. Where does it go? It goes to 0. Where does this thing goes? It goes to 0. And where does a0 by xn go in the limit of extending to modulus of extending to infinity? It also goes to 0. So where does this polynomial go? Oh, it's not pasting again. So I will have to do a cut and paste, or rather a copy paste. Yeah. So where does this go now? This goes to 1, and limit extending to infinity. Where does this go? It goes to infinity, irrespective of modulus of x going to infinity. This anyway goes to infinity. So therefore, where does modulus of px now go in the limit mod of x or absolute value of x going to infinity? This goes to infinity. Actually simple, right? Like this term, I mean, intuitively, what's going to happen is that this term x to the power n will dominate all other terms, because they all come with constant coefficients. And so x to the power n extending to infinity or minus infinity will go to plus infinity or minus infinity, and it dominates everybody else. And then you are looking at the modulus of it. The modulus of it will always go to plus infinity. So therefore, though it took some time to prove that this is a Coursive function, the intuition was quite simple and easy there. We could actually, intuition was there that it is a Coursive function. Once we have said that it is a Coursive function, then we can say now that there is a x star which achieves the infimum of p of x, I mean x star finite, or minimize p of x has a solution. And since we have used Weierstrass theorem, we are immediately able to say that there is a global minimum to it. And so what we are saying is, let x star be the global minimum to this problem. Okay. Now that I have said that this is a global, there is a global minimum to this problem, then the next step to show is that modulus of p of x of star is 0. That means rule out that this number could be greater than 0. And what is modulus of p of x of star? It is x of star to the power n plus an minus 1, x star to the power n minus 1, and so on up to a1 x star plus a0. This is the value, and what we want to show that is this value is going to be 0. So if the modulus is 0, then the polynomial itself has to be 0. That is what now we want to show. Now this is going to need some more tricks that we will have to use some more tricks. The monic polynomial p of x equal to x to the power n plus an minus 1, x to the power n minus 1, and so on up to a1x plus a naught will have a minimum. Let that, we said that let that minimum be at px star, x star be the minimum, and now we have to show that this px star is 0. And I'm sorry, I meant minimum of mod of p of x has a minimum. That's what we tried to show. And now we want to show that that mod of px of star is 0, which is effectively also means that p of x of star is 0. So now I am going to use a small trick here, and I am going to say, without loss of generality, okay, without loss of generality, I am going to assume that x of star is 0. Okay, I give you a minute to ponder on this. What do I mean by without loss of generality, x star is 0? So in the meantime, I'm just playing with this stuff here, and I hope you are in the back of your mind thinking on what I mean by without loss of generality. Can I make this statement that x of star is 0? Okay, so let me amplify the now. Let's say that x star is not equal to 0. Okay, then let me define a new variable called z, which is x minus x star. So what is the value of z at x star? Z is 0. So let's therefore say that we are doing a change of variable, x is equal to z plus z star. Now we have this polynomial in z now. So I will just use, rather I will just call this polynomial as p of z. So I am still using this p only as the symbol, and this will now become, first term is x to the power n, so it will become uh, z to the z plus x star to the power n, because x to the power n is going to be this, plus then my next term was an minus 1 x to the power n minus 1. So instead of x, again I am going to substitute z plus x star, so this will become to the power of n minus 1, and so on up to a1 x, or in other words z plus x star plus of a naught, right? This is what the new polynomial in z is going to be. Now you can apply binomial expansion to this term. So this is going to be z to the power n, nc1, z to the power n minus 1 times of x star, and so on up to ncn minus 1, z x to the power x star to the power n minus 1 plus last term will be x star to the power n. This is nth degree monic polynomial. Now let's look at z plus x star to the power n minus 1. This is a polynomial, monic polynomial in uh, z to the power n minus 1 plus n minus 1 c1 z to the power n minus 2 x star of x and so on. So last term is going to be x star to the power n minus 1 and so on. You can write all this. Now of course this first term you have to multiply by a to the power n minus 1. So whole of this thing has to be multiplied by a to the power n minus 1. And so the just before that, before we terminate, we will get term called uh, z star plus x, for which I don't need to apply I'm sorry, z plus x star, for which I don't need to apply any binomial expansion. So I'll just write here, oh god, what am I doing? Yeah, rubber. Okay, yeah, that this term I will just write it near the end as z plus x star and multiply it by a1. So I multiply this by a1 and then write the last term, which is a naught, and now expand it, add it all together. So I am going to add it all of it together. So I'll add this plus this and so on up to a naught, and I get p of z, which is exactly the same polynomial rewritten in a different way. Now x to the power z to the power n comes only in the first polynomial, so therefore z to the power n, nothing gets added, so it becomes a monic polynomial in z to the power n, correct? Now uh, I add to it the next, what is the next term? The next term is going to be in the in z to the power n minus 1. So I get this term nc1 z to the power n minus 1 x star, to which I will add from the second term an minus 1 z to the power n minus 1. So two terms will be added, and then after that all polynomials are of degree n minus 2 or lower, so nothing will come from that. But because of this addition, I will now call this as b minus bn minus 1 z to the power n minus 1 and so on and so forth up to b1z plus b naught. So this is the equivalent polynomial in the uh, z in the z variable, transformed z variable. And what is b naught? So the b naught is actually uh, start from here. First term gives the contribution of x star to the power n minus 1. Then the second term will give me the contribution of a n minus 1 into x star to the power n minus 1. Last but one term gives me the contribution of a1 into x star, and then finally I add a naught. So therefore b naught is nothing but equal to the value of the polynomial, I'm sorry, x star to the power n plus an minus 1 to the power xn minus 1 and so on up to a1 x star plus of a naught, which is nothing but equal to P of x of star in the original polynomial, and so I have to just show that this is equal to 0. So what I am trying now to say you is that in transformed variables, I have the z minimum of P of z happens at z equal to 0, and I need to show that B of 0 is equal to 0. All this people would usually compress it into one statement, say, which I made earlier, that without loss of generality, assume that x of star is equal to 0. This is what usually uh, people tend to do. Now I am going to do this. I am going to do some more simplifications, which is like this. Let me proceed with it. This is the non-trivial part of this, and it's generally a mathematical manipulation and not exactly optimization, but that's fine. I mean, you can't learn anything in isolation. So let us say that bk is the first non-zero term involving x in the polynomial, in our new polynomial. Okay, the new term in the new polynomial. Okay, that means what I am saying is, after b naught, the first term that you get is bkx to the power k, and then everything all goes on up to the last very first term, which is uh, okay, I'm writing this in z, right? What am I doing? Yeah, I'm writing this in z, and the first term is z to the power n. This is my polynomial in z. So k could be 1. I mean, k could be 1. You could have that term as b1z, or maybe b1 is 0, then it could be b square x square or whatever it is. No, that's okay. So the first non-zero coefficient is happening at b of k, and let psi be the solution. Let psi be the solution of this equation equal to 0, which is to say that bk psi to the power k plus of b naught is going to be equal to 0. This is what I have got. And now I am going to consider a new function called whatever, I don't know what I am going to call it, but I am going to write, it's a function in the alpha, and the only z that I am permitting here is uh, z is equal to psi times of alpha. So if I expand this, what is this going to be? Alpha to the power n, psi to the power n, plus bn minus 1, psi to the power n minus 1, alpha to the power of n minus 1, and so on up to bk psi to the power k, alpha to the power of k plus of b naught. And psi is a fixed thing. It's the solution. It's the solution of this equation. So therefore psi is a fixed thing. So psi is essentially a fixed thing. So you have got a new polynomial with certain new coefficients like psi to the power n here, bn minus 1 psi to the power n minus 1 here, bk psi to the power k here. So these are the new coefficients which this new polynomial has in alpha, in the nth degree polynomial in alpha it is having. And this polynomial I can always say now that, so let me call this as g of alpha, which is defined as, this g of alpha is the function which is defined as modulus of p of alpha times of psi. And so I can always say that this is greater than or equal to 0. Okay. And what is g of 0? Because modulus is there, it has to be greater than or equal to 0, that is obvious. And what is g of 0? It is anyway, it is, uh, I can't right now say that it is 0. That's what actually I want to show, that g of 0 is 0. So but I can say that g of alpha is greater than or equal to g of 0, which is greater than or equal to 0. Why do I say g of alpha is greater than or equal to 0? Because you see, 0 is the global minimum of my polynomial p of z, is it not? X star was the global minimum transformed in z, it became 0. So p mod of p of 0 is the global minimum of this p of z, mod of p of z. And this function g of alpha has been created, this function g of alpha has been just created by putting a restriction on p of z. So can it have a minimum which is lower than the global minimum, which is g of 0, which is mod of p of 0, which is same as g of 0, which is effectively mod of b naught. So can anything be lower than that? No, it cannot be. So therefore I am saying that g of alpha is greater than or equal to g of 0, which is greater than or equal to 0. But now I want to show that g of 0, which is nothing but mod of b of 0, is 0. And if mod of b of 0 becomes 0, what is actually my mod of b of 0? My mod of b of 0 is nothing but the polynomial value, uh, b of 0 is nothing but the polynomial value x to the power n plus an minus 1 x star to the power n minus 1. It's the actually the root of the, at the minimum, not the root, at the original minimum, the value that the polynomial takes is b0, and that's exactly, if b0 turns out to be 0, it means the global minimum at x star is 0, and so I would be actually done with it. So to prove that g of 0, which is modulus of b of 0, should be equal to 0, this is what we want to we want to write. Now uh, now what we are going to do is, we are going to write this term uh, g of alpha as, let me show you what I want to write. I think I have it here already. So where am I? I have gone too far ahead. So done with this part. I'm done with this part. I'm seem to be missing out some things here. Okay, fine. So g of alpha can be written as, see, g of alpha can be written as, I'm going to use this fact that b of k B of k psi of k alpha to the power of k plus b naught. In this, uh, b of b of k alpha psi to the b of k psi to the power k plus b naught is equal to 0. So therefore b of k psi to the power k can be written as minus of b naught. So therefore this term, summation of these two terms, bk psi to the power k alpha to the power k plus b naught, can be written as minus of b naught alpha to the power k plus of b naught, or 1 minus alpha to the power k of b naught. Okay. So now p of z, or rather g of alpha, or rather uh, g of alpha is nothing but, first term is b naught from the reverse order, then the next term is 1 minus alpha k to the uh, to the power of uh, yeah, I mean this b naught is not there because we have already added it the first two terms here. So the first two terms summation is 1 minus alpha to the power k times of b naught, plus all other terms then are of order, I mean they involve coefficients of alpha which are greater than k plus 1 or more. So therefore, I can write them as order of alpha k plus 1, and this summation of this is all coming under uh, this is all coming under a modulus term, because of the fact that g of alpha is rest p of uh, alpha psi modulus, and so this is has to be greater than or equal to mod of b plus 0. And this is a big O notation I have shown you here, which actually means that whatever this value here is actually less than or equal to some m times alpha to the power k plus 1, where m is a big M I had explained to you earlier. So it will go to 0 at a rate which is k plus 1 or higher. So the g of z, sorry, g of alpha now becomes 1 minus alpha to the power of k mod of b naught plus of this order k plus 1 term, and this is always greater than or equal to mod of b naught. Okay. Now this term, by our big O notation itself, we know that this term always dominates this particular term when alpha tending to 0, first term or mod of alpha tending to 0, first term will dominate the second term. Is it not? So therefore, effectively, the statement becomes that this term has to be greater than or equal to b naught when in the limit of, when we are looking at some alpha, mod of alpha below some positive threshold epsilon, then the contribution of this term has become negligible, and so this term has to be greater than or equal to b naught. Now what happens if uh, say mod of b naught is not equal to 0? Okay, So let's just for the sake of simplicity say that mod of B naught is 1, let's say for example. Not equal to 0 means it's positive, right? So then, and you have taken say epsilon is your 10 to the power minus 1. So let's say you took alpha to be 10 to the power minus 2. So then what happens here, and let's say k is also say 3. So then you will get 1 minus 10 to the power minus 6 to be greater than or equal to 1, because b naught is taken to be 1. But is that possible? If I is that possible? No, this is incorrect. So what does that mean? That means that this mod of b naught to be greater than 0 is not feasible with this inequality, which will result if I take alpha very small, because then the higher order terms contribution will become negligible, and this inequality will only be defined by actually the first term, so to say, and therefore that inequality will not hold with b naught strictly greater, mod of b naught strictly greater than 0. So mod of b naught has to be equal to 0. But what is mod b naught? B naught is nothing but x star to the power n plus a n minus 1, x star to the power n minus 1, and so on up to a1 x star, and so on up to a naught, and this has to be therefore equal to 0. So at the root, at the minimum of this uh, which happens at x star, p of x of star becomes equal to 0, and that completes the proof of the fundamental theorem of algebra. This proof again I have taken from the book called the book called Optimization Insights, and Applications, Jan Brinquist and Vladimir Tikhomorov. I'm sorry. And I think you would now appreciate how much optimization can help us in understanding and getting insights into something that we probably knew for a long time. With this, I am going to also close my story on the unconstrained optimization theory. And in terms of theory, we will now be basically bringing our attention to constraint optimization. In between, if possible, I'll also try to put in one or two algorithms, time permitting, on how to do unconstrained optimization. Okay, thank you.